Good morning.
Take that last
Happy
swig of coffee.
Happy Friday, guys.
TGIF.
Absolutely. So I think, Holly, we're at a good point. I'm going to go ahead and let's start this session today so that way we can be on time. How does that sound?
Sounds like a plan.
Beautiful. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our PayMaster Annual Conference. My name is Corey James. Most of you know, I've been with PayMaster going on 13 years. I've held many positions in PayMaster, from payroll to time labor management to new account implementation. As most of you know, I've spoken to you at one point in time, and if you are new here, I would just like to say welcome to the PayMaster family. I would like to go ahead and introduce my co-host, Holly Gibson.
Hello, everybody. I'm here to assist the lovely Corey James today for this session, show, skit, whatever you want to call it. I have been with PayMaster for 4 years now as a business consultant, and I must say 2020 has been the most interesting of those years. Our goal today is to share information. So in the interest of sharing and caring, please share back. We want it to be interactive. We're not talking at you, we're talking with you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go through a few housekeeping items with you. Okay, we're going to mute all of you just so that there's no background noise, so it's nothing personal. So it is interaction, we're interactive. We want you to ask questions. If we can't answer it on the spot, put your information in the chat and we will get back to you. The chat's located in the bottom right-hand side. It looks like that cute little picture with the 2 boxes. Go ahead and type any questions you might have in there, and we will be saving the chat for later. If you have any issues, go to the home screen to rejoin. That's in the top right-hand corner. It looks like those 3 little lines. We refer to it as a hamburger menu. If you click on that, you'll be able to go to the house picture and then rejoin. If you're still having issues, we'll toss you a life preserver ring. That's in the top left-hand corner, just like that picture. And if you get kicked out of the system, do not go to the beach, stay here, just go back to the home screen again, which is the hamburger menu, the 3 lines, click on it, go to the home, and join back in this session. Or if you go to the lobby, they can always escort you back. So when in doubt, go to the lobby, they can always escort you. So this session is being recorded. At the rate it's going, we might have a blooper reel. Please don't forget to do the survey. It's like 5 simple questions. I'm going to put it in the chat right now, and then I'll put it in there again later. And in the interest of keeping this light, we're going to come up with a conference name for you to put in the chat. So if you don't want us to call you by your real name, everybody type in the word hot and whatever the last thing was they ate this morning. So hot and the last thing you ate is going to be your official name for our skit. Take it away, Corey.
Thank you so much, Holly. So we're all here to kind of talk about time labor management. That's what the session's going to be for throughout the duration of this next hour. So how many are you guys currently using a time labor management software? Is it with us or is it with somebody else, another provider? So let's talk about the actual benefits of using time labor management when it comes to payroll. So a great benefit right now is kind of with tracking employees' attendance, especially because this is going to help you utilize it to kind of help coach your employees. You know, a lot of people might be thinking, oh, I don't need to schedule all my employees. We're an office, so we work the same schedule. But it does help you kind of track of if they're coming in early or late, or maybe they're taking off the Friday after, Super Bowl Sunday. You need to kind of approach that. So utilizing schedules in the system is a great benefit for you. How many clients of ours, or how many people in the room actually are using manual timesheets? Is there anybody out there with paper timesheets still? Anybody?
We have Christine saying that she's a new customer. They haven't set it up yet, but they're planning on starting in December. That's a good way to kick off the new year.
Welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. So
Currently
I thought,
using Excel timesheets.
okay, so there you go. So an Excel timesheet. So, granted, at least you're in Excel, but you still got to do those manual timesheets. You got to add them up. You got to take into consideration your rules in that sense. So that can take a lot of time, especially depending on the size of your company. If you have 30 to 50 employees, I'm sure that can take a day sometimes. So having a time labor management software system, especially when it's integrated with payroll, can really help save you time. And what's also too that's amazing with having a time labor management software is being able to kind of lay down the rules. Do you have to sit there and manually calculate the overtime? Do you have to add in the holiday pay? That can take up a good amount of time. So laying down the laws is a lot more simpler when it comes to a software. And another great benefit is no manual entry errors for payroll. I don't know if you guys are like me, but sometimes I go a little too fast or I have kind of fat fingers. So instead of keying in 40 hours, it might be 400 hours. So you got to take that into consideration when it comes to these manual timesheets and even entering the payroll manually. And with that, you're going to have more accurate results. Another great benefit comes with time labor management is being able to kind of see where your labor cost is. Especially if you need to do planning for budgeting for the future, you can look at the past on the timesheets and utilize reports inside the system. So, do you wish there an easier process when it comes to your timesheets and payroll? Let's see if we can kind of go through today and make your process a little bit easier.
Okay, and for those of you that are just joining us, I am going to again put a survey in the chat. It's 5 simple questions. If you could just pop in there at the end and fill it out. And also we were going along with making up a conference name. So type in the chat hot and the last thing you had to eat this morning. That will be your new name for the duration of this. Go ahead, Corey.
Thank you so much, Holly. So a timesheet. Well, isn't that just a piece of paper that the employees can, jot down their in and out for the day? Well, not in our system. There's a lot more things that you can do with your timesheets. So again, start and end. So an employee clocks in and clocks out for the day, and that's usually kind of the terms for a timesheet. But you may have other employees that you don't need that in and out for the day, such as salaried employees. Maybe you want to allow your employees to put bulk hours on the timesheets, or maybe you want the employees to just be able to put in their time off on there, so that way we don't really need the ins and outs for salaried employees. Another great feature for timesheets is, do you want to allow your employees to log into the system and to manually submit their timesheets, or have the system automatically submit their timesheets? That is a very, very touchy subject because, I don't want to have to deal with my employees logging into the system and having to review it. And, because they're just going to bother me to get inside the system because they're going to get locked out, which is understandable. But being able to have your employees log into the system to review their timesheets and make sure that their time is correct will, in the long run, help you out because of the fact of they're signing off on their timesheet is correct. And when you're processing the payroll, if any hours are missed, you can actually approach them and say, well, you submitted your timesheet. So you have to kind of take that into consideration. Do you want to allow your employees to submit their timesheets, or you want the system to automatically submit them? On timesheets, it's just an in and out punch there, but you can actually add a lot more different fields when it comes to timesheets in a software, such as extra pay. A lot of restaurants have the tips. You also may have reimbursements. Maybe you want to allow your employees to make the edits on their time cards for any reimbursements. I actually have a client who recently did want to allow their employees to enter their reimbursements, and they also were able to attach their documentation, their receipts, to the time card itself. So once the employee went ahead and saved their reimbursements, it actually generated a notification to send to the managers. The managers were able to log into the system and be able to switch their earning code from a reimbursement status to an approved reimbursement status. So that's the great part, is when the actual system controller was able to process the payroll, it only would pull in the approved extra pay. So that's the great features of how alleviating some of the areas for you to have to go in and manually put in the extra pay and making sure that it's approved, versus allowing it to allow your employees and your managers to kind of control it. So that's a really great feature when it comes to timesheets.
And Corey, we have a quick question. It says, can you set different rules for who you want to approve their timesheet?
Yes, absolutely. The key word today is customize. We can customize, especially if it's a certain group that you want to give them more access and have more freedom when it comes to timesheets. We can set up many different roles when it comes to the system and being able, because trust me, that same client, I think we have about 7 different timesheets all said and done for their employees, and being able to allocate to those different departments. Another great feature is maybe, you don't want to allow your employees to actually make the edit on their timesheets, but you want them to be able to request the change on their timesheets. So you can kind of utilize the timesheet change request, and when you approve it, it will go ahead and adjust the time. So again, you're not touching it. You're allowing them to kind of keep that communication and be able to see that approval. Another great area is disclaimers. I know we have quite a few different medical field clients going on right now, and they have to have that Medicaid disclaimer at the bottom of their timesheets, because in order to be reimbursed for Medicaid, they have to be able to submit those timesheets. And again, we can kind of customize and make those timesheets available to the employees that need those specific disclaimers on there. And then with timesheets, what's great is about audit trails and approval histories. This is a great feature because if you do have multiple managers that are making changes and you want to kind of keep track of that, you are able to utilize the audit trails and even the approval histories as well. And do we have any other questions when it comes to timesheets?
And again, if you're not sure what your question is, just put your information in the chat and we'll reach out to you and say, is there anything you want us to follow up with you on or get you more information on?
Beautiful. So let's talk about laying down the law with some rules here. So this is a great feature on here of, maybe you have some areas that you want to set up for certain employees and some other people are not the same rules in place. Rounding rule is a very, very good subject, topic that we can talk about, discuss it here. So rounding rules were really in place back in the day when you had those manual timesheets, because you guys wanted to make the hours look pretty and it to be easier to add up on there. So again, it's kind of an old practice when it comes to rounding rules, but we are able to have the rounding set in place. Majority of the time, I think the biggest, most common rule is round to the nearest quarter hour, and that's usually up after 7 minutes. Overtime. Overtime is a great one because of the fact of, different states have different rules. So maybe you have a group in California who have that daily overtime over 8 hours. And then over 12 hours, it goes into double time as well. Again, you can customize rules on the timesheet profiles in order to accommodate those people. Holiday pay. Oh, it's just hours placing on the employee's time card for holiday. But what if you have holiday worked hours? So that's what you need to take into consideration when it comes to holiday work, is where in the day does that kind of come into play? I actually have a client who has overnight shifts because they are a security office for a golf course. And so their shift starts from 10 p.m. to about 6 a.m. So from 10 to 12, they do not get holiday pay for holiday worked hours, but from 12 to 6, they do get that double time pay on there. So being able to have that rule in place, it actually easily calculates the double time rate on the employee's timesheets, and it comes over with the payroll. So that's a great feature being able to have in there. Shift
And
pay. Go ahead, Holly. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and if you want to say that it's coming up, go right ahead. One of them, a question from Mary, is do we have to use the new look?
Currently, the new look is the new norm. That old, the new UI did switch over in the beginning of the year. So that new look will be used going forward. You do have that little toggle though that you can switch from the old and new. So you can always revert back to the older look of like employee information or some of the other areas. They are still working out with everything, but the old look, the old UI is no longer accessible from what my understanding are. They are still working on the looks and everything and trying to update. So sometimes you'll see some things will shift around, and it's just the programmers of the software. So good question. Any other
Eventually
questions?
you will, Mary, but we'll help you.
Yeah.
And now we have a question from John. Can timesheets be approved by more than one person?
Great question. So when an employee's timesheet is submitted, it will generate a notification to the manager to go ahead and approve there. So the managers will make that approval, and then there's a final approval as well from a system controller. So you will have multiple approval states from when it comes to a timesheet, or even using a workflow, you can have that flow of the approval as well. So good question.
Okay, and then from Teresa, and then we'll carry on. Is blended overtime an option for people earning different wage amounts?
That is a great question. And the subject is there are some rules in place that we can kind of talk about that, which we can always discuss later on. If you like to reach out to me and contact, we can go ahead and talk about that in a different manner. Okay.
Okay, go on.
Beautiful. So another area we kind of talked about shift pay, maybe allocating if you have for instance the group that I talked about when it came to the security guards, you know, the morning shift they get their regular hourly wage, maybe in the evening shift they get 50 cents, and at night they get an additional $1. Having the shift pay allocated in the timesheet rules in the pay calculation area is a great way to help the system add those additional rates to their pay, so that way you don't have to manually do that. So that is a great feature as well. Exceptions is a big one that we kind of utilize with timesheets because of the fact that you want to kind of keep track of the employee's time, especially when it comes to approaching overtime. So I see a lot of the times clients will kind of use that notification to generate. So that way it can notify at, 33 hours, oh, this employee is approaching overtime. Please go ahead, review the timesheets. And that way you can kind of prepare and say, okay, Bob, I need you to leave an hour early because you're going to be approaching overtime at this moment. And then auto lunch deduction, especially if your employees are not clocking out. Maybe you want to generate that 30 minutes to be automatically deducted because you know that the employees don't clock out. Or maybe you guys have a paid lunch. Maybe your employees clock out for lunch and you guys pay up to 30 minutes of a lunch. So we might have to add that rule in there that, if they take 45 minutes, well, 30 minutes of that is going to be paid for them. Now, and the great part about this in the pay calculations is that you can go ahead and turn these rules on and off at any time that you need to, especially if you want to go ahead and reapply the rules onto the time cards, the current time cards. You can go ahead and see, are these rules working out? And if they aren't, we can turn them off and reapply the pay calculation and reverse what we've done. So that's the really great part, is about seeing what rules do apply and how can we test it. That's a wonderful part about having the software. Do we have any other timesheet questions when it comes to laying down the law with rules?
Not seeing any new questions. And again, any rules you make, you can pull them back. They may become unnecessary, or you might want to create new ones. And we can always provide a list of ones that you can pick and choose from if you're not sure where to start.
There's many, many different rules, and we can go ahead and turn on, maybe this rule doesn't work, but another rule might work. So a lot of testing. I have to say, I do a lot of testing when it comes to the timesheet and the pay calculation rules. And another thing, customize. Maybe you have, 3 different types of employees that you want to do these different rules for. we can go ahead and create those different pay calculation profiles to apply it on.
And also, Corey, one follow-up question. How do we get the option where the system will advise when overtime is approaching?
We just have to place that notification on. We create the exception rule, and then we turn the notification on to generate who it needs to be generated to. So if you do want to turn that feature on, just give us a call. You can always reach out to myself, and we can go ahead and set those rules up for you. Okay, talking about notifications. So you kind of heard me discuss notifications a little bit earlier. So what are notifications? It's just a way that the system is communicating with whoever it needs to communicate with. Say, hey, please go ahead and log in to review. So one of the things is manager daily reports. How many hours are your employees worked for the day? So that way you kind of keep track of your department. You heard me talk about exceptions, the reports that are generated to you saying, hey, this employee is approaching overtime. Maybe you have an exception because they're late. You want to be notified when somebody is coming in late. Or if they're coming in early, so you can go ahead and have that talk with the actual employee themselves. Standard ones are time off requests. Somebody has to know when time off is being requested, correct, right? Or if a timesheet is submitted. Now, this is a tricky one because to think about it, if you have 100 employees and 100 employees are submitting their timesheets, are you going to get 100 emails? Well, you could. So, when we talk about earlier about a manual submit versus an automatic submit, that's the kind of things that we need to take in consideration. So if you're going to have the systems that automatically going to submit the timesheets, then you don't need to be notified when a timesheet is submitted, because the fact that at 1 o'clock in the morning, the day after your pay period end date, the system's going to submit the timesheets. But maybe this is a good thing for those clients that have manual timesheets that are being submitted by their employees, to kind of let the manager know, hey, Jimmy, he submitted his timesheet. Please review and do your approval. Pay period and reminders. I know I'm pretty bad. Especially working, during these times, COVID, all these days kind of run through. And, it's a hard one because it's like, what's today? Is today Friday, or is today Thursday? You don't know anymore. So having the pay period reminders and even date reminders is a great feature to have turned on. And then timesheet changes. Do you want it to generate and send to the employee? That is opening up a can of worms because, are you going to make an employee upset because a manager is making a change on the employee's timesheet? Or for instance, I just recently had a client who wanted to be notified when the managers were making changes on the employee's timesheet. She wanted to know, as a system controller, she wanted to see those manager changes. So we were able to turn that notification on to generate to the actual system controller. So are there any questions about other notifications that can happen? Or if anybody would like to actually, want to use these features inside the system?
Don't have any questions right now, so we can carry on.
Beautiful. So you heard me talk a little bit earlier about schedules, and I kind of use that mention of, we're office, we're 9 to 5, we don't need schedules. Or maybe you're a restaurant and you do have schedules and you want something that's a little bit simple that you can kind of post on the employee's profile so they can see that schedule. So, schedules are used throughout the system. We have our daily rules that we can kind of create. If you have specific shifts that you want to have in there already automatically generated to make it easier, we can create a weekly schedule, especially like, for instance, I talked to you about that one company that we had that had the shift, the morning, evening, and night. We actually created a weekly schedule for their particular employees on there. And then there's also on the flies, if you want to kind of keep it open so that way you can go through the work week and say, okay, yeah, I need to create a 2-hour shift because I know that Jimmy's going to come in late. So I need to cover that shift for 2 hours for somebody. So utilizing the schedules is great. And I kind of already went over it with you about being able to kind of restrict employees being able to clock in a little bit early. So, if you're having some issues and you noticing that, and a shift starts at 8 o'clock, but you have quite a few people who start clocking in at like 7:50 or 7:55, we can go ahead and place rules inside the system to restrict them. And what's nice with these schedules is, granted, you have that schedule on there, but you're able to change the schedule if you need to accommodate if somebody needs to come in a little bit early on a Saturday and you're not going to be here. Or, that Susan is working late and she's gonna clock out her past the time that she's supposed to be out for the day at 5 o'clock. So she's gonna clock out at 6. A manager is actually able to log in and to do an override and allow the employees to be able to clock out. So that way, it's not going to restrict them anymore. We have automated schedules as well. So that way, you can create your profile and allocate it on the employee. So that way it's the same schedule going forward. And then there's also rounding based on schedules. Sometimes that rounding rule comes around where you want it to more round based on the schedule on the employee's profile. So again, schedules is not a bad thing. It's actually a pretty simple process inside the system, and being able to use it, not just for, letting an employee know when they're supposed to be clocking in and out, but also utilizing it to kind of keep track of your employees, who are your problem children, and also to making sure of doing the restriction and making sure having a little bit more control and utilizing reports. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Angela wanted to know, what are the benefits of setting up a schedule?
Some of the benefits are kind of on your screen here. Being able to kind of keep track of your employees. You can kind of use that to coach and see, are your employees coming late? Are they coming early? Are you noticing a pattern? Maybe they're supposed to be in every Monday, but you notice they're calling out Mondays, football's on Sunday. People like to, enjoy themselves on a Sunday, and you're noticing that pattern, like, hey, they're always calling out. So you can kind of utilize schedules. And even when it comes to performance reviews, when they're like, oh, I want that dollar, you'd be like, well, let's talk about your attendance here. Here's a report. So there's quite a good amount of benefits when it comes to schedules.
Well, and you've stirred the pot up now, Corey, because now we have Mary's asking, are manager overrides preset, or can they be done on demand for punches outside the schedule?
On demand. So when you're talking about a manager override, the employee has to notify the manager, hey, I need to clock in or clock out. The manager is able to go in on demand and do the override, and the employee has about 15 minutes to punch in or out. So that is a great question.
Okay, and then we have follow-up questions. Can notifications go to management for any overrides?
Yeah, we can go ahead and kind of customize for any of those overrides and notify. We can have it, if you want to, we can even have it just going to maybe the higher up, the system controllers. So that way you can kind of keep track of that, especially if you want to keep track with employees and managers, making sure, are there any patterns?
And I think this kind of answered Mary. She said, let me see, excuse me, Megan, if we are seeing some things here we would like to implement in our business, who would we reach out to? Our account rep or someone specific? Reach out to your account rep, put your information in the chat. We will get back to you.
Yes, we have quite a few people when it comes to time labor management. Like I've said, I've been with the company for 13 years, so I'm usually the go-to person when it comes to these type of roles. So most likely you will be talking to me. If not even Romeo, Josh, Stephanie, we all kind of work in the same areas and have the same experience when it comes to these type of roles. But reaching out to your rep is the first step, and then we can schedule accordingly a time where we can kind of get together and make these plans.
And here's another one. Can you pull a report comparing schedules and actual punches?
Absolutely. Great questions. You guys are just jumping the gun here. I got some other slides too,
And you're welcome to say that's coming up. Let me keep going because we're on a roll here. Clearly they had their breakfast and they're all riled up now.
Beautiful.
If we're seeing some things here that, oh no, I already read that one. Can employees see their schedules through this? So this could be a tool manager share the employee's weekly schedule?
Yes, employees are able to log into the system and view their schedules. In fact, in a later down slide, you'll see that, we can include it on their home screen. So great question, guys.
Okay.
And again, if we can't reach all the questions, don't, we're going to get to them. And if not, I will always reach up. You can always enter your email information inside the system, or you can feel free to give me a contact. I'm sure most of us have communicated at one point in time. I'm sure most of you have my email address. And if you don't, you can always call the office, and then they can go ahead and transfer you over to me, and we can kind of go over any questions that I can't get to. All right. So, time off accrual. This is a great one to talk about because, what kind of policies do you have? One of the things that you kind of got to sit back and think about is, what's my accrual policy? Is it a clean and clear policy? And is it a fair policy? As you can see on the screen, I have 12 different time off accrual policies, and you see a lot of different grandfather policies on there. So, granted, it's nice that we can kind of customize and create multiple time off accrual policies, but is it fair? What if some of these employees say, hey, that's not right? They are accumulating this much, but I'm only accumulating that much. So, really kind of sit down and think about your time off accrual policy and see, is this a good policy? Some policies you may accumulate per pay period. Maybe it's an annual policy, or maybe it's based on hours worked. Especially a lot of different states are passing sick leave. So they are based on I believe it's usually a lot of them are actually a 30 hours. So after every 30 hours that the employee works, they get 1 hour of sick leave calculated on there. So a lot of the times, we have clients who have salaried employees who, they don't work hours. So the fact of what do we do for those salaried employees? Well, we have to create a different role for those employees. Maybe we want to do balances only. I talked about multiple policies as well. You can have many policies as much as you want. There's no limit or caps. And then we have the other rules in place, like when is a rollover or a reset? Do you allow hours to be carried over? Or maybe those hours that you want to carry over, maybe you want to kind of restrict the employee, that the employee has to use this within so many days. So you're able to kind of use some of these rules on the time accrual profiles to set these limits of balances, of caps, of rollovers, or dates that you have to use, those times. The great part too is, like, what if you have an employee who was hired in, maybe this is a new CEO of the company, and he's hired in and his rate is a little bit special. Maybe he kind of bypasses some of those tiers in your rate table, and he's at a different rate that you want to give in there. You can actually override their rates as well inside the system, so that way they can calculate correctly. Or maybe you have an employee who's going on maternity leave and you don't want them to accumulate, but you want to keep their status when it comes into there. You can override their rate to be 0 so they don't accumulate while they're out on maternity leave, and then turn it back on, take that override off when it comes to them coming back into work. Okay. Another great thing is being able to see balances, their real-time balances. You have a time off calendar as well. So that way you can take a look and say, oh, what's the time off looking like for the actual year for me? Do I have some availability? And, we already talked about the rollover option and when to use it up. So do we have any questions when it comes to time off accrual policies and what they're using now?
I think we'll keep going here. We're at 10:39. So again, we'll certainly get back to everyone.
Perfect. So now that we talked about time off accrual, let's talk about time off request here. So, allowing an employee to request, time off should be simple and easy, but maybe there's some restrictions that you want to do or some rules that we want to take into consideration. So, granted, maybe you have PTO, holiday bereavement jury duty, but really you only want to allow the employees to request PTO. You can restrict that for the time off request. You can also limit their increments of what they can request. Maybe you want to only allow a full-time day or a partial day as well, or maybe it's a bulk hours that you want to do instead of an in and out. I actually just was working with a construction company, and we were kind of help building out her time off policy. And she mentioned like, oh, I only want them to be able to request 8 hours, and because of the fact of their construction, and they need to take the whole day off because they're not going to be able to go to the job because they're already left for the day to go to that job. So that's the nice part about being able to kind of limit their increments. Even a standard day, maybe you want them to request a standard day, but maybe their standard day isn't 8 hours. You are able to utilize the system to calculate that standard day for them if it's 7.5 hours or 6 hours for the day.
And Corey, we have two good questions here. Teresa wants to know, do the real-time balances take future approved dates into account?
It can, yes. And that's the great part, is about being able to kind of customize. Do you want to take the scheduled future dates into consideration when it comes to real-time balances? Or maybe do you want to do only the current, what has been used on the employee's timesheets as well? So that's a great question when it comes to the time labor management and the time off accrual balances. Yes.
And another one, I would say, Mary would like to know, we would like to have time off category that does not calculate hours on the timesheet. We like to track the time off taken without pay. Can this be done?
Yes.
I topped up her question. Hers was much more eloquent in the paragraph form, but
it absolutely can be done. And again, kind of like that pay calc rules and everything else, we can have the rate set to 0. We can also have the hours actually zero out. So granted, on the raw hours, they see that the time is being allocated, but maybe it's not part of the pay calculation. So these are great questions. And we can take that into consideration when we're setting up the policies and stuff for you for your time labor management. So great question, guys.
They are.
So maybe you guys are seasonal and you have to block out some of those dates because, you can't have employees like here for PayMaster. We're a payroll processing company, and we all know great old year end, got to get ready for those W-2s and, end of year information. So, in the month of December and January, maybe you don't want your employees to be able to request the time off so freely. So you can restrict and put block dates inside the system too as well. Maybe we have a waiting period that the employees have to be employed for at least 90 days or 6 months. That's my husband. He has to wait 6 months in order to request any time off. So, and what's great too in the manager wise is be able to approve. They can kind of utilize the time off calendar, also be able to review the employees' balances when it comes to the time off request. So any other questions when it comes to time off policies and time off requests? I think we're doing good.
We are.
Beautiful. I hope you guys are still out there and awake. I promise you, we're almost towards the end.
Smile if you're not wearing any shoes right now. No, I have shoes on.
So
actually, a quick follow-up, if you don't mind. This is David. He wanted to know, how can I train the manager to approve the time off?
Well, there's quite a few different areas that we can go ahead and do. We can always provide a manager training, a simple one. We can also kind of utilize reports-wise in the sense of we can give you documentation for approving time off, or we can also provide like little videos as well, little snippet videos that you can kind of utilize and send to the managers. So great question. So you heard me talk about some reports and everything inside of our system and utilizing. So here's my main area and screen that we're going to talk about reports wise. So detail hours overview is a great report when it comes to time labor management because you do see that timesheet view of each individual employee on the same screen in this particular report. And what's nice, I utilize this a lot when I do my time labor management trainings with system controllers and even managers. So that way they can kind of get a good look across the board for their employees for the pay period. I also use this same report to create a missing punch report, which is absolutely amazing because on the missing punch report, you notice there that we have some red question marks. And when you click on the red question mark, it takes you actually to the employee's timesheet. You make the adjustment on the employee's timesheet and make sure that there's no missing punches. And once you hit save and come back, into the report, they're going to disappear. So that's the nice part about this system is these little bread trails, and be able to kind of come and interact when it comes to these type of reports here. We also talked about extra pay. Maybe you want to go ahead and run that final report for extra pay. So you make sure that, do you have anything out there that's pending? Especially, in that one instance, I talked about the client who has the reimbursement, and then there's approved reimbursement. Time off calendar, again, so that way you can kind of utilize in that report to kind of plan out, like, should we be able to approve this time off request for Susie when we have already 4 people taking off for the day? Early. Go ahead, Holly.
So sorry, Jeanette wanted to know, can you have a missing punch notification set for employees before payroll?
That one, I haven't come across it, but we can try to look and see in here, especially because you have to think about, a missing punch. Will it generate for the people for that current day? So there's some things that, notifications are great, but also it can be bad. But we might be able to go and build a notification on the previous pay period to generate some type of a notification or exception. That's probably what we can utilize. So that's a great question. I haven't come across it, but I would like to try to create that. Okay. So
Good answer.
You reach out to me. Okay. So that way we can make it happen. So other areas, late, early, absent report. I talked about being notified when employees coming in, and this is that report that you can utilize to approach people when it comes to, here's that time for the review. Let's talk about your attendance. Missing punches, I went over overtime too. Where's your overtime? Where do you need to make those adjustments? And audit trails are really, really interesting inside the system. And not just interesting, I should say. It's a really great area because with audit trails, not only are you seeing when employees are actually making, changes on the employees' timesheets, managers making changes on the timesheets, you can also see where employees are clocking in and out from, the IP address. If they're actually using the mobile app and they're clocking in, you can find those kind of like the GPS coordinates of where they're clocking in from, those pins. So, reports are a great feature when it comes to time labor management, and you can utilize them for different areas. And do we have...
I'm going to ask one last one here, and then I'll keep it going here. We have a question about, can we limit the maximum work hours to 12? Also, can we track the location they clocked in on based on the address or geofencing? Which, if you're going to be covering that, go ahead and say that.
We're going to be covering that. Great question. So again, we can kind of limit in the sense you can't really limit unless you have that schedule on the employee and restrict the punch based on the schedule. That's the way to limit the hours for the day. But of course, do you really want to limit them as well? You got to think about labor laws and all that other stuff. But there is a way that we can generate the system that if an employee works more than 12 hours a day, we can notify you. So great question. So mobile app, look at that. Smart people. We have a good group this morning, I will tell you.
I know, they're lively.
I know, I love it. So, the mobile app, isn't that just for employee self-service? Well, no, it can be for more than just employee self-service, especially when it comes to time labor management. You are able to clock in and out. You're able to request time off and submit your timesheets. And on a manager's point of view, they can approve the timesheets. They also can see the pin location and also take a look and see about, are your employees clocking in where they're supposed to be? Or are you noticing here, like I have 2 people on my screen currently. You see that grouping, a clump, that's the location that they should be clocking in. And then it looks like we have somebody who's maybe across the street in the parking garage. So that definitely does need to be, approached. But also, if you take a look on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we have somebody who looks like they're clocking in from Wawa while they're getting their morning breakfast before they head on into the location. So that really needs to be touched upon. So there was the question about the geofencing, and that's the great part. Yes, we can do geofencing. We can put a parameter around an address so that way the employees cannot clock in outside that parameter. I had of it where a nursing company, they had to make sure that they had the nurses clock in at the actual hospital that they're going to and not across the street at the donut shop there. So Yeah, we can do geofencing, and we can also accommodate the distance of where you want that fence to be laid upon. Okay,
And
so
Angela
great.
was just asking how you see the pin location.
In the reports, you do have the audit trails for the reports, and you'll be able to run the reports and look for the pins. So what you'll see is kind of like, you'll see that pin option when you click it, you'll be able to see, and there's also a map as well. When you hover over a pin, you'll see who that person is and also the time frame that they punched. Great question, guys. And I am so sorry if I'm a little bit rushed, but we're coming up towards the end of our hour here. So I just want to make sure that we kind of hit everything. Okay. So time clocks, a lot of the times, we are in some difficult times right now. 2020 has not been very great to us. Especially I have always been kind of a germaphobe. So, for me, not being able to touch anything has been very nice. I've been trying to keep away from, touching time clocks, but sometimes you might have to touch a time clock. So, would a web clock be good in your surroundings? Especially if your office, maybe it's okay. But, you kind of have to kind of take into consideration with employees, oh, Susie, can I give you my login? Clock me in. I'll be in the office in 10 minutes. You could kind of run into that area, if you want to restrict so that way they can't clock in from outside, or do you want to open it up? Especially, how many of you guys are working from home currently right now? I will tell you, I'm working from home right now in my office. So also too, maybe you guys want to do a face recognition, maybe you wanted to be able to allow your employees to come in, take their masks off, have the face scan, and go on with your day. A great question that somebody asked, especially with now what's going on, is do you have a time clock that checks temperature? We currently do not, but we are working with manufacturers, especially because over in China, they do have that availability of having clocks to check temperature. So that is a great feature. So keep checking back and we will update you. We will also let you know once we do have that time clock available. We will let you know and alert everybody, because that's a great feature, especially at this point, we don't know how long this is going to go on. Another area too, one of the things that we talked about, environment. What's your environment? Do you want to have that employee clock in and out, via fingerprint because, it's more secure? Well, for instance, I had a client who is a zoo, and they had a new hire. They enrolled a new hire in the morning. And then at the end of the day, when the new hire went to punch out, the punch wouldn't recognize it. So because it's doing the points on the fingerprint, it just didn't recognize. So the employee was like, oh, must be the machine. Next morning, came in, was able to clock in just fine, and worked the shift. And then at the end of the day, they went to go to put their fingerprint on the time clock to clock out for the day. Again, they couldn't clock. Employee was upset. Manager was upset. Oh, this stupid time machine. It's that. It's not me. It's that. Well, come to find out, that employee cleans the cages. So when you clean cages, you're going to be working with water all day long, and your pretty fingerprints are no longer pretty. They're pruny. So the fingerprint couldn't register because the fingertip was not the same in the morning as it was at the end of the shift. So the resolution was to have the employee work their shift and then register a second fingerprint, the pruny finger. So that way now the employee was able to clock in the morning with a regular fingerprint and then clock out at the end of the day with their pruny finger. So again, you got to think about that, about the time clock softwares and your environment and what works best for you. And then one of the last areas, we talked about the new UI and what it looks like and the dashboard, especially logging into the system. And now I was a person that I was like, oh, the dashboard, it's okay, but I prefer my old view. And so I revert back to that. But looking at the dashboard now and looking at some of the widgets that you have available, there's some great features that you can turn on for your employees to see, like their schedule. That was one of the things about being able to view their schedule, looking at their timesheets, looking at the last time that they clocked in. I'm notorious because I want to make sure that I'm clocking back in, at the right time. And also their accrual balances. Manager views. Do you want them to be able to have quick links so they can have a one-click link to areas inside the system? Missing punches, they're able to kind of view that area inside of the dashboard if there's missing punches out there. Their attendance board, they're able to click that and view their attendance board on there. And any other things like timesheets that are waiting for a final approval and exceptions as well. So granted, I know new things can be a little bit scary, but playing with it, looking at it, and customizing it will help you guys out in the long run.
And Corey, I hate to cut you off, but we're wrapping it up here. And what we're going to end up doing is taking everyone over to the lobby. For any of you who put those last second questions in there, can you please put your contact information and I will get you your answers. Take note of the screen, take a picture of the screen if you want that contact information. And we're going to be sending you over to the lobby. Magic is new to me, so I'm going to try to send you to the lobby. If anything happens, Corey will send you to the lobby and we'll take it from there.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me this morning. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to PayMaster and they'll patch you over to me and we can work on your time labor management. All right. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day and have a great rest of the conference.
Yes, fantastic audience. Thank you. You were great. Okay, let's try to send you over to the lobby.